Good morning, this is Connor from 500 Edge, where we trade SPX 0DTE options. If you want to join the team, link in the description. In this video, I'm going to recap the previous session and break down what matters today ahead of the opening bell. On Monday, we took a total of 3 trades, 3 winners, for a total absolute return of $3,661 or 1.67% in our 1% risk model portfolio, where we are risking no more than 1% per trade. Biggest winner, long put, 7470 for 102% return. On the session, SPX opened with a gap to the upside, quickly reclaimed 7500 and broke the previous session's high of 7498. That is a bullish signal. However, price ran into the SPX flip level at 7510, rejection, false break of 7500. That is a bearish signal, moving down into the support zone of 7475, 7470. We were dip buyers here looking for a higher low play. We got that, had a nice move higher, nearly testing 7,500. We closed for profit on this move higher. I think we essentially top ticked this, and then it rolled over. We had some Trump headlines here, came back down to lows. We had a bit of a reaction here off lows. Response was relatively weak with this upsloping trend line connecting the lows from the previous session. And then we had a move up into the downsloping trend line of the session, connecting the high 1, 2, 3. And then this was our short here for this move down, although I must say I closed really early. And then, of course, on the fourth test of the low of day, 1, 2, 3, 4, we broke and we moved down into 7450 and the pre-market low of 7440, essentially closing at lows. However, only down 0.2%. There were a lot of mixed signals on the session, particularly at the open, as the large gap up was led by the growth complex. Technology open with a gap to the upside, about 1.3%. A little bit of a run up here at the open, got sold, retraced the full move. Same deal with semis, they opened up about 2.4%, got sold and retraced the full move. Now, the trend for the SPX was down on the 15-minute time frame with the 20 EMA in green below the 40 EMA in red and downsloping. This is follow through from the past 2 sessions. Additionally, this is the first day of negative gamma post-option expiration, trading below our main transitional level, the SPX flip of 7510. So we would give a bit of an edge to the bears, expect a little bit more volatility, and vol remains sticky, unable to break the lower bound of 17.9, 17.6. Vol buyers active, with the VIX closing just below the big 19 handle. 19 remains major resistance on the upside. 19.5 is Friday's peak, and then above that 20.5. And if we zoom out, 20.5 has been a point where vol sellers were active back here in June, and where we saw the reset in volatility. So potential upside target and rejection point. And then above that, 20.5, which was the peak back in earlier June, where we also saw a vol reset. Now, as far as the downside goes, 17 potential target. We have that 19.5 level, a big level on the downside, which we just based below, right? This was resistance for about 4 sessions. We broke out. That was the bearish signal. And so that is potential support now, and then a break below opens the door to that lower bound of 16.12, 16, 15.8. So a bit of a kind of a cluster down here. But VIX remains elevated. It is something we want to pay close attention to on an intraday basis, with the potential for feedback loops in both directions. So if volatility spikes, that's going to invoke sell flows, exacerbate the downside. If volatility crushes, it's going to invoke buy flows and create that squeeze rally on the upside. For today in the pre-market, all major U.S. equity indices are in the green. S&P 500 up 0.5%, NASDAQ up 1.3%, Russell up 0.6%, Dow up 0.4%. Meanwhile, the VIX down 4.5%, trading below that lower bound at 17.6. The SPX has been in a range over the past 2 trading sessions, a range within a range. So we got 7,500 on the upside, SPX flip 7,510, that is unchanged. Previous high 75.13. A break opens the door into a gap zone. Fill 75.34, followed by 75.50 as resistance. On the downside, previous session's low 74.40. A break implies downside continuation with major support. So the lower bound of the larger range at 75.30, 74.30, 74.22. A break opens the door to the big 7400 gamma strike, that is G1. Levels within that range is a little bit less clear, kind of a mixed gamma profile. But some levels to focus on here: 0 gamma 74.55 and the SPY flip at 74.72. Transitioning over to our dashboard, total gamma exposure for the SPX remains negative, 270 million notional, so negative but not material. Trading below our main transitional level of 75.10, below most strikes are negative, that is destabilizing for the market price. Above, all strikes are positive, that is supportive for the market price. A bit of a neutral zone between 74.75 and 75.10. Some strikes positive, some strikes negative. Major net negative strikes on the downside: 74.50, 7400, and that 74.25.30 zone. Now, this doesn't look very significant on here, but if you go over to the SPY chart, this has been a big level for about a month now. SPY 740, which is SPX 74.22 equivalent. That is technically the put wall. In terms of the upside, again, bulls need to reclaim that 75.10 flip level. Some resistance, 75.25, 75.30. We got that gap fill up in there as well. And then kind of clean, open skies to 75.50, which would be the first major resistance level above 75.10. In terms of the implied move today, 0.8%. That is an implied high of 75.03 and an implied low of 73.83. We continue to look for catalysts to spark the next direction of move, and there's just not a lot going on here this week. The calendar is relatively light. No major releases today. However, we have earnings coming up, Mag 7 names, with Google and Tesla reporting on Wednesday after market close. So potential catalyst there. And then, of course, geopolitics, headline risk remains high. Trump can come out at any time with a headline, positive, negative, and spark the algos. So that's just a risk we need to be aware of. But that's it. Not a whole lot has changed. VIX remains in focus. Sector rotation remains the primary theme, and we need some sort of catalyst to spark that next directional move.